morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Life Inspired. I am so excited to give a big announcement today. We have a little bit of back noise in the studio this morning, but that's okay, no problem. Well, we won't say who did that and embarrass them, right? But we have a big announcement coming. We are on, I think today's the 97th episode, and we're going to shift, instead of having Life Inspired on Friday mornings, we're going to shift to Monday evenings. We're kind of thinking 7:30. We'll know more and tell you more in the next couple of weeks. But we just really feel like this message that we send out on Life Inspired, helping people connect to God in the way that they connect to God. You know, everybody does differently, and each one of these stories that we tell, you know, might be like yours or might be like someone that you know. And we think that if we put it on Monday nights, you'll get some more views. So we always want to shout out and thank Daryl Buchanan for our exit music. We Have Jesus, and if you like that song, you can download it on iTunes or go to darylbuchanan.net for that. So thanks to Daryl. And our guest for Life Inspired today is Mr. Bob Wade. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to hear your story today.
Yep.
So for those who have never seen the show before, what we're going to do is I've got three questions to ask Bob. So typically there's a turning point moment, and you're going to tell a story about some ... and then God moment where he moved you from what life was like before your ... and what was the turning point, and then what was it like afterwards. So tell us, what was life like before your turning point moment?
Yes. Well, I got to go back to when I grew up.
Great.
I grew up in a small farming community in Ohio, about
Okay.
25 miles west of Toledo, called Delta.
Oh.
And my father, he dropped out of school in the 8th grade.
Wow.
My mother ended up going through high school and then ended up becoming a beautician. And so I was the middle child. And I was exceeding academically, but my parents really didn't know what to do with this kid.
Right.
When I approached my parents, I said, I really want to go to college. My dad said, I'm not quite sure, number one, we can afford it, but number two, I'm not quite sure the maze that you go through in order to get there.
Right.
But my first ... moment was I was 11 years old.
Okay.
And so I remember I was in the Cub Scouts.
Oh, okay.
And so the week before, my pastor came to our house, and we had this the Bible called the Love Bible.
Oh.
And he walked us through what it meant to have a relationship with Christ. And talking about the personal relationship. And I think a lot of times as a kid, you think your relationship with God is the church.
Right.
And,
for
and
sure.
it's the building or whatever.
For
It's the
sure.
people in the building, not a personal relationship. And so that's the first time that the lights went off and said, I can have a personal relationship with Christ. I
With
can
the
actually
God
talk.
of the universe. That's crazy.
Exactly. I don't need somebody to intercede on my behalf. I can, pick up the phone through prayer and dial them directly.
That's
so
awesome.
It was great because I was praying for long term and having God really tell me what I need to do as a youth in order to succeed. And when I was 11 years old, success to me was more career, etc. Now that I'm older and looking back, it was more of the success on how to build the kingdom. So what happened after I accepted Christ and continued to pray, I was told to really study academically and succeed. But God brought a lot of people into my life. And
Right.
looking back, you may say, well, this is just random interceptions
Right.
that happened.
Nope.
They were all God
God
inspired.
did that, for sure.
And so I had people, primarily through the Boy Scouts when I was growing up, kind of telling me, how to succeed in life, what I could do. And the first person that I was my director, so to speak, taught me how to get into college.
Oh, awesome.
And fortunately, I was successful to get a full ride at Bowling Green State University.
Wow.
There was this contest in Ohio called the most successful or most outstanding high school junior. And so every high school in northwestern Ohio selected their most outstanding high school junior. And I think there was like maybe 300 of us, and they whittled it down to 10.
Wow.
And then we went through this interview process, and I had a teacher in school that I was asking her to coach me, because we had a dinner. I didn't even know how to eat at a formal restaurant.
Oh, wow.
So a dinner and how to talk in front of a large group of people. And so, and she said, well, I'll help you, Bob, but you're up against a lot of wealthy individuals.
Wow.
And so therefore you have no chance because you're just from a small farming community. So
Right.
I said, okay. And long story short, I was selected as the most outstanding high school junior, got a free ride at Bowling Green.
Praise God.
And that summer, I went to Buckeye Boys State, and another very interesting thing happened. I ran for governor at Buckeye Boys State. So Boys State, just like Girls State, is sponsored by the American Legion, and they bring two high school kids together throughout the entire state, and you form this government for a week.
Huh.
So you live in a city, so to speak. It was at Bowling Green, happened to be, and
Okay.
then you form the city, and people ran for offices. Well, I ran for governor. I lost, and so I ended up, I got my bar. I passed the bar at Buckeye Boys State, and ended up running for president of the Bar Association at Buckeye Boys State. And so we were, I was selected as the president of the Bar Association for Buckeye Boys State. I was coming down in this elevator, and this guy said, do you happen to know any lawyers? And I said, yeah, I'm a lawyer. I'm the president of the Bar Association. And he said, well, I'm accused of harassing somebody in my city, that he was asleep, and I put shaving cream in his hand, and we tickled his nose, and he slapped his hand. And they said, I need somebody to represent me. Would you represent me? And I said, yeah, I'll represent you. And so on the way back up, we talked a little bit about the facts, and ended up representing him. Lo and behold, there was a judge, an actual judge, in the back of the room. And he came up to me afterwards, and he said, for somebody who has not studied the law, I said, and again, I'm as a junior in high school, I said, this is really, you did a very, very good job on this.
Wow.
Then, at the end of Buckeye Boys State, they select two people out of everybody attended. It must have been like maybe 2,500. So two people to go on to Boys Nation.
Ooh.
And it's typically the governor who was elected and the lieutenant governor. And so this judge who saw me advocate, he told me that he nominated me for Boys Nation, and I was selected to go to Boys Nation.
Wow.
So I went to Boys Nation, met President, I'm trying to remember which president. Oh no, the president was out of town at that time. But it was a unique experience, but it also kind of lit the fire of the law.
Why you wanted to study law.
Exactly.
Sure.
And so studied in undergrad, and ended up going to law school. And my parents were just looking back and said, I have no idea what you're doing.
Right.
And I said, I'm flying by the seat of my pants.
For sure.
Too. So,
for sure.
I met my wife, Anita, at Bowling Green freshman year.
Oh, you did.
And this is kind of an odd story, and I'm trying to make it very condensed. So we were part of this. It was called the Ambassadors at Bowling Green.
Okay.
And what we did is when dignitaries came into Bowling Green, then two students would actually show that dignitary around, or VIP around. And so we were in this room, and after that meeting, this lady came up to me and said, she was engaged to somebody at the time. He said, somebody in my sorority would really like to go out with you and would like to take you to one of her sorority parties. Would you be interested? And then she said, you don't have to pay. They pay for everything. I said, okay, I'm game. And
that was Anita.
Well, it was Anita, but we had another party. My fraternity had a party beforehand, and I was friendly with Anita. I had a fraternity brother come up and said, dude, do you know that she is the sister of a brother in the fraternity, so you better leave her alone from a protection. I said, she likes me. So anyway, I didn't know this until we got married, but when she told was going to be her future sister-in-law that she wanted to date the cute guy across the room, I was not the cute guy.
Oh.
It was the guy sitting next to me that was the cute guy.
Oh, no kidding.
But anyway, I won her heart, and so again, it was sort of a mistake that happened that caused us, to get together.
That's cool.
And so then,
So when they came to talk to you, they were mistaken.
yes,
Whoever it was that said Anita wants to go out with you was supposed to tell somebody else Anita wants to go out
correct.
with you. That's crazy.
Yeah, so we were set up on a date when I was the wrong guy.
That's so funny.
So,
That's so funny.
Yeah, and she kept it from me until, like I said, about
you
a
got
week
married.
and then before we got married.
That's so funny.
It's just kind of another way that God intersected.
Sure.
And we were destined to be together. And we were married between undergrad and law school. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, I was looking around the room, I said, I'm surrounded by a lot of very
Sure.
intelligent people.
Sure.
And I said, if I can just graduate in the top half of the class, I'd be very thankful. long story short, I graduated number 3 in my class.
Wow.
And so I was able to have a lot of experiences, a lot of opportunities with respect to law firms. So I started out with a very major international law firm. At that point, it was because of where I ranked in the class.
Okay.
And then God gave me the perfect wife in order to allow me to dedicate my time on my studies. And obviously God gave me the intellect in order to do so, planting the seeds for the future.
Sure.
And so this law firm had 1,500 attorneys worldwide, so it was a very large law firm.
Okay.
And I got to a point where I was looking around at the law firm and all of the partners, and about half the partners were divorced, workaholics. And I said to myself, yeah, I really don't want to be here long term because I don't think that that's where God wanted me to go. So I wrote this letter to the largest 3 firms in Fort Wayne, because that's where my wife is from.
Okay.
And I didn't hear anything from all of them. And then one of the law firms got back to me and said, we really like your resume. Would you be interested in coming to South Bend to practice? And living in South Bend, this is this is embarrassing. I said, I have no idea where South Bend is. And she said, have you ever heard of Notre Dame? I said, yeah, I've heard of Notre Dame. And I said, if I'm going to move from Columbus, Ohio, I'd have to take the bar exam over again because you're moving from a different state. And I said, I really want to go to some place where I'm a little bit more comfortable. And so I basically rejected the offer. 2 weeks later, they called back and said, we're really interested.
We really want you
Exactly.
to come to South Bend.
And God just laid on my heart that there was a purpose for me to come to South Bend.
Okay.
And Anita and I prayed about that quite a bit. And in the end, we said, yeah, this sounds like a good move.
Sounds like what God wants us to do.
Exactly. And now looking back, that was a pinnacle decision where, God connected the dots for me and said, I've trained you well, Bob, and now there's a purpose for you in this community. And so we moved here in the fall of 1992. We've been here quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I can see his fingerprints and quite a few things that I've touched, not only, I guess, career-wise, and I will take it out of the career. Career-wise, it was that I ultimately became the general counsel of St. Joseph Regional Medical Center here in South Bend. So I was general counsel there for about 7.5 years.
Okay.
And as part of the leadership team when we built the new hospital.
Okay.
But I was brought in at a time where St. Joseph signed a corporate integrity agreement with the federal government. So they were on a mandated compliance program. So I walked in as their compliance officer.
Okay.
We call it an integrity program, and there's always a contrast between what is compliance and what is integrity. But I was there for 7.5 years, but it planted the seed on what I'm doing presently, because I took my experience that God blessed me with at St. Joseph and have started this national practice focusing on representing hospitals on regulatory issues. So a lot of times when I say I'm a healthcare lawyer, people think malpractice. I don't do any malpractice.
Okay.
So it's all dealing with regulatory issues, dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, physician financial arrangements, and the like. And so now that today, when I'm looking at my practice, even though I live in South Bend, Indiana, only about 5% of my work is from South Bend.
Wow,
So
really?
95% of my work comes from outside of South Bend.
Interesting.
And when I interact with other lawyers in town, they always say, "Who are you?"
Oh, because they're not used to seeing you in court.
Right. Yeah, I
Interesting.
don't step foot in court.
Interesting.
So I do a lot of work in Indianapolis. Florida is a really hotbed for me, and of all places, Hawaii. I do a
Really?
lot of work in Hawaii.
Interesting.
I came home last week and I told my wife, I said, I spent the entire day in Hawaii, representing clients there, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think what God planted the seed when I was young on how to be aggressive, focused, and accomplished, and using the skills that I had in order to continue along the path in order to be successful later in life.
Right.
And looking back to my humble beginnings, both of my parents were blue-collar workers. We were on food stamps for a while, and so we really have a passion. My wife and I have a passion for helping the poor and the underserved.
Right.
And for a long time, Anita, my wife, was coordinator of a food pantry in town. And so when it closed recently, and when it closed, I got really emotional. And my wife said, "Well, why are you emotional about this?" And I said, I'm not so emotional per se about the adults that were visiting. I'm more emotional about the kids. Yeah, that were represented. And then how else are they not only going to get food, but sometimes food is the pathway to a relationship with Christ. And so that's what the food pantry was all about, is not only feeding the poor, but if you feed them, a lot of them came to Christ because
of the gifts.
Yeah, because of those gifts.
Wow.
So that's a little bit on the career side, talking about where God has used me for further building of the kingdom. I was an elder in my church, River Valley, and for those of you in church and you know the elders there, you need to go up and thank them for their service. You need to pray for them, because
yes, definitely pray for them.
I did not realize how much Satan was going to attack me
In that position.
Oh, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so my wife and I went in there with our eyes wide open about, I said, because people prepared us. They said, but this is not just sitting around approving of budgets and stuff. I mean, you're going to get confronted with a lot of the hurt that people are dealing with, and Satan will put up roadblocks to make sure that, or try to make sure that you don't succeed.
Right.
And something happened at the church while I was an elder that we brought in somebody who was counseling the church and said, this church will not survive.
And it's still there today.
It
Preaching
is.
Jesus.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we locked arms as elders and said, we're going to plow through this. And looking back, God assembled a great group of people with differing skills. I was obviously the token lawyer in the group, but with different skill sets in order to make sure that the church made through a very difficult time and experience. So. And then also the other major impact on the local area was Covenant Christian School. My wife, when we first moved here, we had 2 daughters at the time, and she was looking for a daycare preschool situation. And so we found a Covenant Christian School, and they were actually operating out of a church on Hickory Road. And the
Oh, it wasn't where it is now on Fur?
No.
Oh,
No.
because that's how we know each other. We know each other because our kids went to school together.
Yes,
so,
exactly. So it was operated where Harvest is now.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay.
So it started there, and then some things happened that I became president of the board at that time.
Okay.
And so we lost the space there and was able to find the space, and so I was president of the board for 6 years, or five out of the 6 years, and we led a capital campaign to build that church and
to build the building on Fur and
correct
and
Fern
McKinley.
Fern
No,
Day,
Fur and Day.
Fern Day Road.
Fur and
yeah.
Day Road.
Yeah. So it was and you look back and look at all the lives that school has impacted.
Absolutely.
And
One of my teammates has her son there now.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And we always tell people that for Christian education generally, not everybody can afford it, and so that's also it's a blessing for those that can. But it's almost like a 3-legged stool that you want the home and the school and the church to act in concert. And you kick one leg out, like the school, and the child could get confused.
Right.
And so I think that there is a need for Christian education,
For sure.
and especially establishing scholarships for people that can get
Absolutely.
into that. So.
And while I was at Covenant Christian, we were praying for a program there to provide scholarships for people that wanted to send their children there, and then my family was a recipient of that because I wasn't working, and so we the first year that the 3 girls went, we were the recipients of that scholarship, and then God provided for us to keep staying there. So so that's pretty great. I have a couple of questions for you. So when you talked about that you guys were praying, I think it was when you talked about praying about coming here and God laid it on your heart. You used the phrase God laid it on your heart. What does that mean, and what does that look like? Because some of our viewers may either not yet have relationships, that they have their own personal relationship with God, or they may, maybe they don't know how to hear from Him. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, first off, I think what God did is He made me restless in my current position.
Just kind of, something's not right?
Yeah, and so again, looking around, that was not the firm that I wanted long term.
Right.
So that restlessness caused me to look elsewhere. And then when we started taking a look at the community, and I just felt that God was saying, this is the place where I want you to raise our kids.
Okay.
And having a smaller community. Now, you can do this in New York City
For sure,
or elsewhere,
absolutely.
because your community is where you live and where you interact.
Right.
But we felt that South Bend, with the size of the city, was a good city for that, and we also really liked the religious undertone that this community has.
Right.
And so those were reasons to bring me here, and frankly, God made it that they gave me an offer that I couldn't say no to.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so
very
sometimes
cool.
you look at that and
Right,
God blesses
right.
you from that. I mean, I don't always say that you do exactly what God tells you to do and he's going to bless you with abundance.
Right.
Because sometimes God is still blessing you even though he doesn't give it to you.
For sure.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's how.
Yep. So I also want to say to our viewers, because some people, my husband and I were just having a conversation this morning about, how some people are jealous about things. Oh, well, I parked in a parking lot next to this fabulous car, and why don't I have one of that? Or a girl on my team Tuesday was saying, yeah, sometimes my kids would be like, oh, they have that. Well, yeah, but they also have this and this and this. Are you looking at their whole picture, whatever? But some viewers might look at Bob Wade and say, really, why did he get all that stuff? Because you've talked about all the blessings that God's put things across your path, like the way he had the accident happen for you to meet Anita and things like that. So some people might look at your story and feel like, well, why did Bob get that or whatever? And I know the Bible verse, to whom much is given, much is required. And I feel like part of your story, you're telling us, God gave me all these things because he knew what you were going to do with them. He knew that you were going to steward those gifts wisely and give back and all of that. So do you have any tips or encouragement for our viewers about how are some ways they can get connected into the community and give back? And as we start to do that, then we can't outgive God, right? So he's going to give us more to be able to give more. So do you have any tips for places to get involved, connections that people can make? Anything that you can think of?
Yeah, one thing is become part of a Bible study, because in fact the questions you're asking is what we wrestled with on Wednesday.
Okay.
With my Bible study.
Okay.
And it was all about the word contentment.
Oh.
And how do you remain content as a Christian? And okay, so I'll lay it out there. 2 months ago, I bought a Corvette.
Okay.
And I've always wanted a Corvette.
Okay.
And so you talk about, I'm interfacing with a lot of people. There's no way that they ever could afford a Corvette. And so one of the guys in my Bible study challenged me, and he said, well, are you sending the wrong message to people? Yeah, and I've got a beautiful house. And so you look at all those things. I said, well, first off, you have a biblical obligation with your resources. And resources more than just money, but I'm going to focus on money.
Right.
And as long as you are fulfilling the biblical responsibility of your resources today, you're tithing 10% and above. And if God has blessed you abundantly above and beyond that, God's okay with you enjoying the stuff that you have. So I think first off is just pray for contentment, and then now talk about the resource of time. That God, you pray that God directs you with your time. And it's very interesting during the challenging times with the church and with Covenant Christian. The list will go on and on. In my business life, sometimes it can be very frantic. Tons of stuff. I put in 10-hour days, that kind of stuff. And then when something hits at the church or the school, my work goes down. And a lot of times people panic over that. They go, oh my gosh, am I losing it? Because my business isn't there anymore. But God has now freed up time.
So that you could give over here what was needed.
Exactly. And so that's how has happened in my life, that God has created that space for me. And then he's put on my heart that, okay, now I have given you the space. And sometimes it freaks me out because I want that work to come because that's how I make a living. But I said, okay, God is calling me to do something during this period. We have the feast and the famine. And sometimes during those little famines, God is directing you to do something. So
that's awesome.
To be very specific then is going to your church and talking about their opportunities there. There are a lot of parachurch organizations, just like Christian schools, storehouses, and things like that that you can get involved with. And the people, going back to the storehouse, that had the most impact are not the bean counter, so to speak, and the people who give direction to the storehouse. It's those people who package the goods and walk those goods out to the car and put those goods into the car and say, "Can I pray for you?"
Oh, I love that.
That is the direct touch. And so
Sure.
a lot of times, for me, sometimes I feel a little bit guilty because I'm out here doing the lawyer thing, but then I'm basically a channel for God.
Sure.
And so I have to channel those resources. And so even though I'm not out there praying at that car side for that person, I've made it possible for that prayer to take place.
Sure.
And so we all have a place, and we all have a
Absolutely.
purpose.
Yep.
And one is not better than the other.
Absolutely. They're all critical. It's a big puzzle, and you need every piece to finish the puzzle for
Exactly.
sure. I do. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, everybody that's watching, we're so grateful. Remember that if you want to connect with Bob, you can message us here. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. You can get to inspiredhomes.com and find us. And so, if you want to connect, messages in any one of those places, and we'll, get you in touch with Bob to ask him questions about his walk, or even about, maybe you're a young person and you're thinking about a career in law.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about that. Or if you know someone that needs to sit on the red couch and tell how and why they followed Jesus, we'd love to have those stories as well. And then if you know somebody that needs to hear Bob's story, if you'll share this with them in whatever venue you're watching it, we appreciate that. So thanks so much for watching. You guys have a great day and a great weekend. Bye-bye.